Hey there, welcome to another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty. It's Chump Lady here, Tracy Shorn, your host. It's just me today. And today we're going to be talking about 10 ways to cope when jerks win. This is a little pep talk I gave on the blog, and I thought I would expand it and make it a recording because, repeat as necessary. Things get tough lately.
10 ways to cope when the jerks win.
So this is about how do you eat the shit sandwich of injustice and keep going? As it happens, this is my wheelhouse, overcoming oppressive fuckwits. Like, I've lived it, I write about it as Chump Lady, and eons ago, I even studied it with my useless master's degree in history. So my blog and this podcast are essentially a gazillion curated stories of overcoming adversity. And cheaters just happen to be the obstacle of choice around here. Unless you think I'm talking about the current political moment we're having, I am. But you can also apply the following hard-won wisdom to any set of oppressive fuckwits or any oppressive circumstance you happen to find yourself in. And I'm not telling you that I have arrived like I'm some Zen master at choking down shit sandwiches. But chumpdom is a great teacher. And when your world is bottomed out a few times, you learn how to build new worlds. Even when your ex faces zero consequences, swans off into a new life with Schmoopy, and stiffs you with a check. This is what I've learned about coping when jerks win.
Don't let them steal your joy.
Fuckwits might steal your wedding china, your spouse, or your 401k, but they cannot take everything. There are still Mozart choral masses, carbohydrates, golden retrievers.
Shut up, Tracy. Embroider it on a pillow. I don't have time for your Pollyanna shit. The world is ending.
Look, it might be. So pack as many almond croissants and belly rubs as you can into it. Fuckwits would love nothing more than to avoid the competition with choral masses and be the only thing streaming in your head. So deny them.
Focus on what you do control.
One of my favorite quotes is from the painter Alice Neel. And she said, "The minute I sat in front of a canvas, I was happy because it was a world and I could do what I liked in it." I totally related to that idea that we make our freedoms and acts of creativity. I can do what I like here. Like, God damn it, the world sucks, but in this space, I have autonomy. So my advice to you is find your canvas. Figure out the places where you have agency. Like when things are grim, the only place, for a while anyway, might be the inside of your head or what you write, paint, or create. Today, the only thing you might control is your haircut or if you took a shower. But take solace in those acts and keep adding spheres of influence where you feel safer and saner. Look, we cannot control everything, and we absolutely, certainly cannot control fuckwits. And the anxiety of that, about what they're going to do next or who they're going to endanger, and monitoring them and policing them, that anxiety can make anybody really stress sick. So, and this is not easy advice I'm giving you, right? It's a lifetime of trying to figure this stuff out, but figure out what you can let go of, what you can escape temporarily, and what you must hunker down and fight for. Remember, you always have choices. Those choices might suck. Choices often suck, but you are the decider.
Find community.
You are not alone. As humans, we have not felt anything that a bazillion other humans have not felt before us. So read history, read memoirs, talk to your elders, people like my Aunt Joy, who we've interviewed here. Figure out how they survive this shit. Surround yourself with people who support you and who are not afraid to walk into your cracked open heart. Avoid the rubberneckers and the assholes who get a contact high off your grief. Unfortunately, there are many of those kind of people. So finding peers it's so important. It's so important that I built a whole community, Chump Nation, around this idea that nobody understands what you are going through like somebody who has been through it. So if you don't find the flavor of community that you like, Go build it. Okay? I promise you that you are not the only person who feels like you feel. And helping others is a great way to get outside your own head.
Have boundaries.
The gift of chumpdom is discernment. Okay? I don't let just anyone into my life anymore. So getting back to those rubberneckers and the Switzerland friends, as an old person, as a middle-aged lady now, my time is precious. And if you are neutral about fuckwits, we do not share the same values. I could waste a lot of energy trying to convince you of my worth, or I could go build a better world without fuckwits and their enablers in it. So ask yourself, who's an emotional vampire in your life? Who takes pleasure in your pain? Who undermines you subtly and not so subtly? Stop giving those people energy. I don't care how much shared history you have with them. Do not let them tread on your sanity. And this is what I also discovered about fuckwits and rubberneckers. When you've built your new life without them, then they're going to want back in. It's all, oh, let's let bygones be bygones. And the stench of rejection and failure is off of you. And then they're like, hey, we're good now, right? No, we are not good. I have discernment.
Never lose your sense of humor about this shit.
In the darkest times, if you cannot find the absurdity in a situation, then you still have your soul. You can hear me cracking up on these podcasts. In fact, when I listen to myself, if I can listen to myself, I'm always kind of surprised at how much I'm cracking up, like I'm giggling, or I have levity about it. And like some people can see dead people, I can see humor in fuckwits. And humor is dissonance, right? It's the ridiculous contrasted with the norm, the true north. And that's why comedy duos have straight men, because there is no outrageousness without a foil. Let's say I'm telling a joke about your fuckwit who doesn't pay you child support, and the punchline is, and then he bought Schmoopy a brand new set of boobs. Well, the gallows humor here is that real parents pay for their children, not silicone boobs. So we know what true north is, supporting your children, and why not doing that is outrageous. So when you stop being outraged and you stop seeing the absurdity, you are dead, right? That means your values have been corrupted into a world where such entitlement is natural. So my advice to you, keep laughing at this crap. Snark is your safety valve, but it also underscores the fact that you have a moral compass. Like, this is crazy, right? And also, never punch down. Vulnerable people are not the butt of jokes. Aim your barbs at fatuous fuckwits. Use your powers of snark for good and never evil.
Keep showing up.
I know, fuckwits are exhausting. They will drive you in circles with their chaos. I am so tired. But listen to me, showing up pays dividends. Let's talk about our children for a moment, if you have them. Children know who showed up and who did not. And there is no intimacy and no investment without showing up. And let's face it, showing up is mostly a grind. It's doing all the adult non-sparkly things, like booking the dental visits, or cleaning up vomit, or listening to teenagers whinge about writing their college essays. And it matters. This is the work of building solid citizens and ethical human beings. Any fool can buy a shiny toy. Real people give their time.
Keep fighting.
Fuckwits excel at chaos because they excel at nihilism. When you don't care, and I mean you really do not give a shit about anybody but your grubby little urges, life is easy. There's no conscience to trip you up. There's no hurt feelings to navigate around. There's no inclination to clean up your messes. Not caring is the fuckwit superpower. But they do care how they are perceived. So, your job is to keep snarking and keep holding jerks accountable. They're not going to act out of conscience and the greater good. But The more people who believe they're good guy shtick, the more people they can manipulate. So be clear what good guys look like and how they fall short of the mark. Do not bow down. Do not be their PR agents. Do not confer friendship. If goodwill is on the table, it must be earned through actions like pay child support, for example. I once had the great privilege of interviewing South African hero Alby Sachs. So go look him up if you don't know who that is. We'll talk a bit more about him in a minute. But during apartheid and exile, he helped draft a new democratic constitution. And this was before South Africa had a democracy. And he said in this interview that I did with him about 6 years ago, that the thing about being in exile and never knowing if you're ever going to get power is that it forced him to be creative. The people in power, he said, they tend towards laziness. They're comfortable. Power narrows their perspective. It makes them comfortable. Resistance, on the other hand, adapts. It's innovative. And Sachs was able to crib the best parts of other constitutions because he lived in so many different countries while he was in exile. Thus, his disadvantage actually became an advantage. So the advice from this is to outfox fuckwits. Get creative, right? Plan for the day that you are free. Fuckwits will never expect it because they underestimate you.
Remember, this is just a window in time.
We're going to come back to Alby Sachs. I think his life is one of the most inspirational stories of all time, and I encourage you to go read about him. He has an autobiography called Soft Vengeance. And I'm telling you this story to demonstrate how wherever you are, whatever you are, suffering this moment, it's a window in time. That's all it is. It's a window in time, and things can look very, very different later. So the story of Alby Sachs, when he was a young man in South Africa, he was a young lawyer, and he was active in the democracy movement to end apartheid. And in 1966, he was jailed, tortured, and deported. He spent many years in exile in London and other places, working for a day he never knew if it was going to come, that he could return to his country. And in 1988, the South African government blew him up with a car bomb. Those fuckwits came very close to killing him, but they did not. He was blinded in his left eye, and he lost his right arm. So in 1990, I actually met Alby Sachs when I was in graduate school, and he was in residence. So like imagine Thomas Jefferson is in your cafeteria writing a constitution. He was drafting that new constitution for a new South Africa. And this is before there was a new South Africa. So think about this. This is less than 2 years after he has been blown up by a car bomb, lost his eye, and lost his right arm, during which time he had to learn how to walk again and how to write again. And he's still tilting at that democracy windmill. And the same year, in 1990, he returned to South Africa. And in 1994, Nelson Mandela appointed him as a judge in the Constitutional Court, which is the highest court in the land there. It's their equivalent of the Supreme Court. That is 6 years after they blew him up with a car bomb. 6 years. Think about that. So like when he survived that attack, I'm sure that he could never have imagined that he would soon sit on the bench and judge those fuckwits and dismantle their system. But he did, and he spent 15 years on that court. You would think that somebody who's been through that, jailed, tortured, exiled, blown up, would give up on life. But no, that is not the only way that Alby Sachs rebuilt. His first marriage to a fellow activist ended during his years in exile. And in 2006, by which point he had been single 36 years, he happily remarried and he became a parent again in his 70s. And as I'm recording this, I want to tell you that Alby Sachs is still alive and well at the age of 89 years old. And he said this about the amazing trajectory of his life. Freedom isn't miracles. It was just persistence.
They're still them.
Oh, this is the least satisfying answer. Yes, they are still them. The jerks who won the pick-me dance, who left the arena with all the cash and prizes and zero accountability. You and I are both going to have to take a spiritual view on this one. Listen, fuckwits are still chaos monsters. They're still shallow as a puddle of piss, and they're still moving the goalposts on happiness and finding fault with everyone around them. So injustice, when it gets to you, when it really, you cannot stand it, think about what it's like to be a fuckwit. Okay? I'm sure you've had the experience of going somewhere that should be fun and being unable to enjoy it. Like maybe you got a stomach bug, or some incredibly annoying person is on the trip with you, or maybe you just had an upsetting conversation with your mother. I don't know. But it doesn't matter like how beautiful the surroundings are or how distracting the company. You're unhappy. That is them every single day. Sure, I'm not saying they don't have pleasure. There's fleeting pleasure and shiny things, right? But fuckwits have holes in their soul. They don't do depth or connection or contentment. So how happy are they really? And honestly, you don't need their unhappiness to be happy in your own life. But think about it. Do you really want a fuckwit's perpetual dissatisfaction in your life? Do you really miss that shit? Or do you just miss the illusion of it and the trappings that go with it? Fuckwits do not have the raw materials to love deeply, because the shadow side of intimacy is vulnerability. And fuckwits don't do intimacy. They do transactions, a zero-sum game of getting over on a chump. So don't be their chump. Move along, unless you want to be of use and spit out too with everybody else. So when you're thinking about schmoopy, sure, things might endure with schmoopy, but that's probably because they have a higher tolerance for bullshit than you have.
You're still you.
You're still you. What do you stand for? There's nothing like a crisis to clarify your values. Do you believe in honesty, fidelity, commitment, kindness, reciprocity, treating people the way you'd like to be treated? Know who you are. And if you're going to fight the bastards, innovate. And always break occasionally for joy. That wraps another episode of Tell Me How You're Mighty. You want to leave us a mighty story or a fuckwit of the week submission? Check out our new website, tellmehowyou'remighty.com. That's yours spelled Y-O-U-R-E. We've got all the episodes, show notes, links to our guests, and you can see the tea room where Sarah and I first met. If you enjoyed this episode, please review the podcast and follow us. Thanks. See you next week.